So let me open the discussion to start with on the planning challenge itself, right? How do we get the data right? How do we get the science-based targets right? So I want to go to Prarthana, I want to go to Rama ma'am and Arif with these questions. So I'll start with Prarthana. The question, I hope you have a mic, yes. So what I would like for you to kind of deliberate on, you've seen the presentation. What would you say is the reason why cities should take a science-based approach towards their climate action planning? What is the benefit of it? And the second part, could someone please take a look at the mic if that works? Yeah. And the second part could be, what are the key challenges that you think cities need to grapple with in order to undertake this data and science-based approach? So the two-part question there. Maybe I'll give you the mic.
Thank you, Vivek, and thank you, WRI, for having me. It's my first time in Indore. So I think before I get into your question, one of the things that the study revealed was, I was looking at it, is the challenge of data. And I think because I come from an organization which sits on one of the largest data platforms, both corporate as well as city data platforms, I think I can just throw a little bit of insight on that. And the first is, when we are looking at assessing for, say, developing a climate strategy or a climate plan, while we do need project level data, we also need larger data. And when I say larger data, I mean, if you look at our CDP city questionnaire, and many people don't know that we have a city kind of questionnaire. We have about 1,000 cities that disclose to us. Firstly, you need to report on or disclose on your emissions. And on that, cities are, it's easy because, you do a JJ inventorization and you report and you disclose the emissions. And so if we look at our 1,000, and I'm talking at a global level, I just wanted to come back. And then, so I said that, it's easier to report or disclose on emissions. And if you look at the 1,000 plus cities that disclose to us, about 400 of these, more than 400 actually, almost half of them can have disclosed on emissions. I'm talking about global cities, not even talking about Indian cities. But when it comes to targets, that number reduces because target setting is complex because, you need to look at, say, when you're setting your targets, you need to look at risk assessment, you need to look at the whole aspect of, what kind of a strategy you're looking at. And this is where you come, there's a scientific process for it. So you have to align yourself to the temperature that you want to, globally. There is a 2-degree kind of a target that you want to take, or do you want to reduce it to 1.5 degrees? So I think, so there are two things there. Then you actually have to set a target because as was also shown in the report, that the development goals need to match with the climate goals. So I think that is where the target setting becomes very important, and that is where the challenge is faced by cities globally, and definitely Indian cities, because it is about assessing more than just projects. And I want to now come back to the micro level. So we had Indore disclosed to us last year, and I have an 18-page report of what that data is. And this is public data, so I mean there's nothing to hide in it. But if we look at it, the data that was generated was more in the form of a narrative. So what happens is when you do not really have or measure the numbers, and when you don't measure the numbers, then the narrative becomes more in terms of a storytelling, and it doesn't help you assess. So what can we do about it quickly? We just saw this amazing study which shows that what would happen if we decide to if Indore does decide to take a challenge of going for the advanced scenario that was presented. So for that, then we need the more micro level data. And when I say micro level data, it is basically about assessing the risks, looking at you're basically looking at emission inventories, which is already existing in Indore, so we don't have an issue. And then finally, the climate planning. So, there is three things. There is the whole issue of looking at the emissions. Then we look at the risks and the opportunities, and that is integrated into the climate plan. And there is an entire process for that, which can be guided through. But finally, I think where the main issue comes, and which is where I think organizations like CDP or WRI can help, is in the capacity, because I think the scientific capacity as far as this whole planning process, or looking at the scenarios, is something that it needs to be looked at.